Hey there, Lorcana lovers, my name's Lizard, and today my friends Frank and Tony will be joining me once again to finish our tier list, ranking every legendary card in Lorcana so far. So let's get into it. Alright, welcome back everybody. Today we are going to finish this tier list. We are adding in the legendaries from Rise of the Floodborn. Again, I have with us both Frank and Tony, two highly skilled players, and their input is extremely valuable when making this tier list, so hello guys, thanks for joining us again.
Hello, yes, thanks for having us.
Yeah, excited for round two.
Awesome. Okay, so let me reestablish, we've got S tier, A tier, B tier, C tier, and let's make this again the Gone To tier. So S tier, we are
back.
It's back. Poor Gone To. S tier, we have established that these are cards that are auto includes. If you're building a deck in any of these colors, you're going to want those cards in that deck. A tier, we established, are really good. Not necessarily auto include, but you're probably going to have them in your deck. B tier is still great, but is definitely not an auto include, but also, it's more situationally good and has some potential. C tier still has potential, but not seeing a lot of play. Future sets indeed could make that better, but as it stands right now, these cards just aren't seeing much play. And then finally, Gone To. These cards see no play, and chances are they're probably not going to. They need a lot of help. But yeah, that's it. S through Gone To. Without further ado, how about we start with one of my personal favorites, Mufasa. And I'm going to stick him right up here in A tier and see who yells at me first.
Yep, nope, strong agree. That is like the definition of A tier. Like, he defines a deck and he makes that deck work, but outside of that deck, he doesn't see much play. Like, all-star. Super sweet card, also. I remember seeing this card in spoilers and was just hyped to see how we could break this card.
Yeah, it took a little while, but once people figured out where he belonged, he's doing well. I like him a lot. In the Ruby Amber deck, he fits really great, and also there's an Emerald Amber deck where he fits really well. And the Emerald Amber deck particularly runs, for the most part, like all characters, so you're guaranteed to hit something off the top of your deck, which is really helpful with tempo.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, honestly, even with some of the upcoming cards we're seeing, I think he's going to have a whole new deck archetype coming, but he is perfect for the A tier. Like Tony said, he defined an entire deck, and honestly, even if you're not in that style of deck, if the deck has a high enough character density, you might as well toss one or two in. Worst thing you do is you have an okay body. Best thing, you can have an okay body that flips into a great body.
Right. So do we think do we think his position in the A tier is appropriate, or should he go above that Stitch and or Bell as well?
I think he's better than the Stitch, honestly. Stitch is solid. Stitch is a crazy late game drop, but again, Mufasa defines a deck, and that deck has really seen some explosive amounts of play.
I could even see him moving like up above Bell just for like the way he sits with a meta. Like, he creates such a strong deck.
Yeah, the only thing with that is Mufasa doesn't close a game out quite like Bell can. Bell can come down early and do great work, and she can come in late and do great work and win a game for you. Mufasa, I suppose, if he hits a character off the top of your deck, like in that Emerald Amber, if you're hitting, say, a Ray or a Cusco, something that's giving you 3 lore, Cuscos are really nice to hit off the top because they can't be dealt with unless they're challenged, and if they are challenged, he has that no touchy ability, so he's going to be banishing whoever challenges him. So there are situations where Mufasa is better than Belle, but there's also times where I would argue Belle has more value than Mufasa. So they're definitely fighting for that second place spot in the A tier.
Yeah, definitely. Like they're very different sides of the spectrum. Belle is explosive, while Mufasa is that grind game.
Right.
For sure.
Well, let's leave him alone there for now and see what happens as we continue. Let's stick with our amber color and move to Snow White. Unfortunately, she's uninkable, and that makes things a little bit more challenging. She does shift 4, which is nice, but she's definitely not seeing anywhere near as much play as Mufasa. She fits well into that Dwarves deck, which is just not nearly as competitive as some of these other decks. I don't know. I think she goes in the B tier. What do you guys think?
Yep, that's pretty much where I see her placing. Just sit her right in that B tier, and she's like, again, the value she provides is really solid. She gives you a character every time you quest with her. Like, that's some really solid value. It's basically drawing a card, and if your deck is built to support it. But right now, we don't have a ton of like discard shenanigans going on. We're getting some, which I'm very excited for. But there's times where she is just a good quester. That's pretty much her biggest value.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and I think Hades fills her slot better at this point. He's uninkable too, but you're guaranteed to get him out for 4. You're not always guaranteed to get the Snow White out for 4 cost. You know, you'd have to shift her to achieve that. Granted, she does quest for 1 more than the Hades does, and her stats are a little bit better, but as it stands, I find myself slotting Hades in before I'd slot a Snow White.
Yeah, absolutely. Like B tier is a very solid home for her. Like she's not the best. Like she's very situational, and the ability to constantly recycle cards is really nice. But like you mentioned, Hades does it for cheaper and also is more accessible. I think like with some better ways to shift her out, or if we start getting more cards to just like drop her out of nowhere. They were very smart when printing her, and they said, hold on, just in time. No, can't have her with just in time. Put her at 6.
Yeah.
So it very much feels like they were trying to dodge their own just in time, so that you can't drop her on turn 3, and now all of a sudden you're recycling your little, like if you're playing aggro, you're recycling those little questers that die so easily, but like here they are again, ready to go.
Right, that'd have been slightly unstoppable. I agree. Putting her at 6 cost was a very smart decision. So does she go above Mickey, or do you like her in a second place B spot?
I'd put her above Mickey just because I love Mickey. It was one of the first legends I opened in the first set, but Mickey's just a decent body with decent questing. But he's outclassed. Snow White has that potential to do some really silly stuff. And then once she gets out there, she gets going. Mickey's more of a please remove me, whereas Snow White is please remove me, but I'm also producing a lot of value.
Yeah, I agree. I do. Okay, let's move on.
Yep.
How about we go to Fairy Godmother? I think for now, I think she's also an A tier, or rather B tier, but I do think she's got a lot of potential to be moving up to this A tier with the next set releasing more cards that like to challenge. I think she slots well into a Ruby Amethyst deck with the Shere Khan and with that Queen that allows you to draw cards, so she's probably going to become more popular once that deck really starts to take off.
I remember the first set coming out with Dr. Facilier in the pre-con, and I was super excited to have that effect with Dr. Facilier. And then Fairy Godmother came out, and it's like, this is just even better than Facilier.
Right, yeah.
It's so good. Like, being able to recycle beaters, rush characters, and everything, just, it feels unstoppable whenever you really get it going.
Yeah, I agree. And also, I mean, she shifts for 2. You could... does she have a 1-drop? Is there a 1-drop Fairy Godmother?
She has a 3-drop. So
Is that what it is? Okay.
yeah.
So one thing that is very important, I do agree, placement is perfect. I want to say, like, she has that potential to get bumped up in the future with what we get. And I think the thing that definitely keeps her solidly in B is because we have to remember that her ability paints the field, so everyone who's on the field when you use it gets the effect. So it does have the downside of you can't go and, like, say if I have a Rafiki on board, I can't use her and then Rafiki something and then play him again and then Rafiki something and then play him again. It'll only work the one time because it happens when she quests.
I see.
Yeah, true.
But she is that ability to just kind of say, hey, my board of attackers is now going to be able to challenge well above their weight. And in some cases is even just going to be even better. Thinking about some fun shenanigans with brooms in the future. The idea of just having, like, the set 1 brooms, knock out a couple characters, and then play them again for like how cheap they are, and then mess with any deck that wants stuff in their, like, discard pile, put those back into the deck, or even just recycle some of your own really solid cards.
Yeah, I think she'd be a lot of fun with a potential brooms deck, and clearly brooms are getting more and more attention. I was thinking it was going to be more of like a slow drip. Every new set they'd give us like 1 more brooms, but it seems like they're going all in for set 3. There's quite a few brooms that I've seen revealed so far, but yeah, and a number of them are amethyst, so I think that would be some pretty fun shenanigans to get into coming up here. But okay, yeah, I agree. Top of B tier for now. Let's move on to our other amethyst legendary, the Madam Mim Purple Dragon. I think she is going to be right next to this fairy godmother just because she's kind of difficult to actually get online. What do you guys think about that? Bouncing 2 characters back to your hand isn't always doable with the deck profile that it fits in. If there were more of a low to the ground aggro deck that you could get her into, it's still dropping her on 7. A lot of times aggro decks aren't even making it to 7 ink, you know? So I don't know. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, her not having the shift, you really feel it. Like, this is one card where it's like, oh man, I wish she was shiftable, because dropping her turn 5 even over turn 7, or if you're ramping into her, it's just turn 7 plus 2 characters on board. You get her on board and she goes crazy. Like, she is a menace. But getting her down, just it's such an investment.
It really is, and you wind up shorting yourself ink. I mean, a lot of times the Ruby Amethyst deck has a lot of uninkable cards, and if you're trying to hold on to the cards that you know that you can get into play, so that you're making sure that you have at least 2 characters to bounce for her to come in, it just feels really clumsy. It's hard to pull off.
Absolutely. Like, I'm gonna be honest. She is in the same slot as Mickey. I don't think she deserves above Snow White, only
Okay.
because, as we mentioned, she's very nice in the sense of, oh, she's big, she quests for a lot, she's got some good stats, she has the evasive, but she comes down 1 earlier than the Mickey. She has only 2 more toughness, and you have to pay 2 characters back to him, which isn't bad because that could be a huge boon. Like, if it's a goat you're bouncing, or like goats, rabbits, any of the Merlin package, great bounces, but the problem is every single time I would rather play a fox and a snake for that same 7. I'd rather have 2 bodies that are doing a lot of work on their own, even if they quest for half.
Yeah, in a way, it just kind of contradicts what you're wanting to do at that point in the game. That's when you're really cleaning up the board and really embracing the control aspect of your deck, and it's just, like I said, it's kind of clumsy. All right, let's talk about this beast, Relentless. I think this card has a lot of potential. I think it's gonna get better, and when he does pop off, wow, does it feel great. It's like, God forbid you have 2 of them down. you're going to be closing out a game pretty quickly, but he fits really well into that steel emerald deck with all of the pinging stuff. But does he belong in the A tier or the B tier? That's the question.
Yeah, I absolutely adore this card, and I'll say I feel there's an argument that could even be made to actually bump him to an S just from his versatility and generally good body, but he's definitely an A tier. So I am a diehard combo player. I love combo decks in a lot of the stuff I play because the synergies are gorgeous, and Beast Relentless has very silly potential, even with a single one out. Actually, me and Tony played a match with. I have a Relentless Pingers deck that whole focus is on just comboing with the beast and otherwise controlling with pings.
Yeah.
Even with an okay hand, I managed to produce against my Sapphire Ruby popsicle item control. I managed to produce 8 lore in one turn with pretty okay cards, but like just the fun interactions behind his ability. Because if you have a bodyguard out, he gets readied before they can ever challenge him. Because he doesn't care that you did the damage with like your own characters or spells. It's as long as an enemy thing takes the damage.
Right. Yeah. Offensive and defensive shenanigans.
Yep. So if they play something that puts a damage on their own character, so like Teeth and Ambitions will, I believe, ready him.
Yeah, it should.
If the opponent plays it.
It should.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of like niche stuff. I think if you need just a generic, like solid body somewhere in your deck, he's always a good ad for Emerald because, like I mentioned, he can go, and if you get him down on a later turn, he can swing multiple times with challenges. Not as good as some of the later cards we'll talk about, but he makes the core of the ping combo deck. And I think he deserves an A. Like, he does create his own deck, and he's just so solid as a body. Decent stats, the ability to both, you can say, oh man, I really want to take that out, but I want to quest as well. He can do it.
Yeah.
You can challenge the thing, take out a character, he readies because of his own ability, and then you could quest with him, giving you the 2-for-1. Basically a better Taka in every way.
He's quite frustrating to get rid of because, you know, you better hit into him with something that has at least 5 attack power, or else that's the only shot you get, unless you have other means of pinging some damage. But, yeah, he's a tough one to get off the board. And honestly, the most interesting thing about this card is that he's inkable. That's not something you see a whole lot of with useful Emerald cards. It seems like a lot of the better Emerald cards are uninkable. So that's definitely working in his favor.
He's one that makes me sad that we don't have instant speed questing. Like, as in, like, you can't respond if you get multiple readies with him from, like, grab your swords or something. You can't just quest, like, 5 times if they have 5 characters. Oh, that would be so sweet.
Oh, yeah, I see what you're saying.
Yeah, just grab your swords, untap him 5 times, 10 lore. Like, oh, that'd be so sweet. But he puts in some crazy work, and I'm excited to see what potential he can bring to Emerald in the future too. Like, Emerald Steel is the perfect home for him.
Okay, let's move to the next Emerald card. A card that was anticipated to be really, really awesome. I don't know if you guys remember any of the pre-sale prices for this card on TCG Player. It was just nuts. I feel terrible for anybody who bought a Bell Archer at, $100 plus, because
holy crow.
Once we finally got our hands on the cards and tried slotting her into things, it just didn't work. It didn't work nearly as well as people had hoped. It might be different now with the new Morph character in Emerald that she can shift onto pretty nicely. But aside from that, she's not doing the work we had anticipated. So I'm putting her in the B tier, the bottom of the B tier. I don't know, do you guys disagree with that?
I feel like she might be worth sticking in C tier for now. At the very least for now. Like, she's very nice, and then you mentioned that morph option is going to be really cute being able to play that. It's the downside being that steel is currently at the forefront of everybody's mind in that new set, and a single smash takes care of her regardless of the turn, and they don't lose cards for that.
Exactly. She's easy to deal with.
It's also that sort of angle of Ruby has plenty of ways to deal with her. Like, she's really fun, and I was so excited like when I saw, oh, discard is going to be so interesting, but there's that way of like, I don't have to hit her, I just have to be faster than her.
Yeah. Well, and she's another one that's
Like,
just sort of clumsy, you know. If you're coming to your turn 5 and you're playing discard the way that you know you want to see it with your curve, your opponent's already not going to have a whole lot of cards in their hand. You might have that Donald Duck online by turn 5, but at that point, you know, they might even have an empty hand, so they have no problem hitting into her.
Yeah. Like, comboing her with something like Whole New World, like in more of like a mill strategy, kind of emptying their hand, could be cute, but it really just becomes, don't worry about her. Don't challenge her. Like, if you can take her out other ways, great, but just don't worry about her and outpace her.
yeah.
Yeah.
She's also a princess, which means the apple takes her out if you're playing against an item deck. So items have that. Ruby has also generic removal. Steel takes her out pretty easily. Amber's gonna outpace her. Like,
Yeah. Dice to removal is not always an excellent argument, but it fits well for her.
Yeah. All right. Moving on. Let's talk about Donald Duck. I think we got ourselves another C tier card here, maybe even bottom of the C tier, in my opinion. I'll hand it over to you guys. I don't have a whole lot to say about Donald Duck. I've never played with him. I just haven't been interested in playing with him. I don't know. It doesn't seem that great to me. What are your thoughts?
he's yeah, C tier. He's not quite to like on to tier yet. He's very close. He's got a foot in there, but
yeah, 1 foot in and 1 foot out.
It's like 1 foot in the gone to tier.
One very webbed foot.
I think the only thing saving him from that is the fun interactions with set 2 brought us Teeth and Ambitions, which is going to have that very fun way of like, I get to make him quest for 3 now, and I get to take out something with only 2 toughness of yours, or put pressure. The evasive is the only reason he can survive as well.
Oh, that's right. He is evasive.
Like,
yeah.
Yeah, like evasive is the only, like, they probably looked and said, this could be fun. Give him evasive. He's not going to survive if he doesn't have it. Like,
right.
Very forgettable card.
Yep, he sure is. Let's talk about a card that's a lot better than Donald Duck. This Scar, Vicious Cheater. I think he belongs in the A tier, and I think he's going to see more and more play as we get cards that are going to shut down songs, or like the Tianas that are shutting down all actions. He's a perfect card to counter that, and Tiana's becoming more and more prevalent in competitive decks. So therefore, Scar, in my opinion, definitely belongs in at least the A tier. What are your thoughts?
I actually say I think he goes to the top of the A tier. I think he's so close to an S. I love this card a lot because he is the definition of a mind game card. If you're in Ruby, turn 7 is horrifying for your opponent. So it's Be Prepared is now online, and my favorite little mind game I played when I first built my popsicle deck I mentioned, item control. He was in there alongside Be Prepared because on turn 7, they're like, all right, they're just gonna, or as soon as I have 7, they're like, all right, they're just gonna take out my board with a Be Prepared. And so I'll quest everything out. I won't play anyone new. I'll just let it sit. And then here comes, cool, my turn. I'll draw. I'll play a Scar. I will take out everything on your board. He will still be alive. he's ready to go next turn. I'll quest for them, and I'll still have 1 or 2 left over to set myself up a little bit. So people would play around, be prepared, get blown out by Scar, just kind of pops in, takes him out. And like you mentioned, now that be prepared kind of gets turned off by the Tiana effect, now he's a very good body just to have take those attacks. And even better is after the Tiana's gone, or if it is gone after, you can just sing it with him and have a whole bunch of ink to play out your hand.
Very true. Yeah. I mean, he's in a lot of cases he's basically be prepared on a body. You know.
Very much so.
He wipes the board quite often.
And I could see him cruising up into S tier, honestly, as we go forward. Like, seeing a lot of song hate, like you said, ripping actions from hands, getting rid of dragon fires and be prepareds. There's not really too much to get rid of characters yet.
Yeah.
So,
well, you know what else
Scar's just going to get better and better.
Something else that's pretty scary is the resist keyword. There are already ways to give this guy resist. And, you know, if you have Cogsworth out, I mean, he's already in a, like you said, the popsicle control. There's a potential for Cogsworth to already be out. So if he doesn't clean up the board as is, he's definitely going to clean it up if he has any kind of resist on him. He's just going to be quite troubling.
And honestly, talking about resist, he doesn't care about it either.
Extremely dirty card in the right circumstances. He's a pretty awesome alternative to be prepared, and like we said, it's just becoming more and more prevalent. So I think top of the A tier. Elsa, you were the queen of the A tier, but Scar pushed you down, and Daddy isn't here to save you. So
I mean, he's a vicious cheater. He'll do what he can to climb to the top of that A tier.
Yeah. Let's carry on here and talk about Alice, Growing Girl. First and foremost, what a great piece of art. I really enjoy the artwork on this card. And she is another character, in my opinion, that is friends with Belle, in the sense that she's okay in the early game, pretty decent in the early game. She can be ink. She's got her utility just about at any stage in the game. And at the end of your games, she could also be the one that closes it out and wins the game for you. She's especially fun when you're playing against people that are screwing up the math in their head and they think they're okay. And just one small miscalculation, next thing you know, they lose the game because their math was wrong. And she does, in fact, have the 10 attack that she needs to gain her 4 additional lore. So she's good fun, in my opinion. I think she's an A tier card. What do you guys think about that?
I love Alice. So the hard part for me is I wanted to put her in A as well. And the only thing that's holding me up about wondering if maybe she does have to go to B is just because Belle's advantage is that Belle also says you can ink a second card every turn. And Belle has like that extra way to help you regardless of what deck you're playing. Whereas Alice requires that she is the deck has to say, I kind of want Alice to be the way I win. Like, I love the card. Like, this is I pulled one enchanted, and it was her, and I'm so happy. Like, I love her to pieces. I think she's really fun and has that cool deck. And I'm just trying to decide because the Belle's utility of ink 2 cards a turn is really what makes them the powerhouse in the A tier. Whereas, like, it's there, but I think Alice just needs a little bit of a boost to bring her into the A tier proper.
Yeah.
With potentially some cards coming around.
If we bump her to the B, she's probably gonna sit at the first place spot in the B tier.
Yeah. That's like, that supportability can be massive, and that tempo swing that it can bring to a board is really strong. But you gotta take advantage of it, and finding that slot to take advantage of it is tough. But I do agree. I think top of B, bottom of A, somewhere in that range.
Yeah. What I will say though, real quick, is that being that she is inkable and she only costs 3, there are situations where later on in the game you can drop 2 of her, and surprise, if you have the support you need, you could very well be questing for 10 lore, and would most certainly be winning the game at that. So being that she is so easy to get down, that's helping her a lot. But yeah, I think she's still, I agree. I think top of the B tier then would be a good spot for her for now.
Yeah, but there is something to be said about getting multiple down of her. Like that, it just closes out a game, and she is very impressive in that regard.
Yep.
Yeah, I think she fights Belle for the same slot in a deck, and I think that's where she loses out of A tier. Is that because you could drop the 2 Alice, but you're always on the cusp of any type of board clear. Be Prepared is on the next turn if you're dropping her on curve at 6 for the double.
Yeah.
But like Belle and her both kind of say, "Hey, here I am. Deal with me or lose." But Belle says, "Even if you deal with me, I still produced my value earlier on potentially."
Yeah.
Whereas the support is nice, and you can maybe take something out you couldn't before, but just she herself doesn't do the work.
Yeah, I agree with that. Let's talk about Sisu then while we're on Sapphire. She's another card that, granted, she can't do it right away. Unfortunately, it's whenever she quests. You get to, look at the top 2 cards of your deck, put one into your hand, and put the other into the bottom in any order. You could, choose to not take either one of those cards, or you could choose just to take one. Really, really helpful ability there, and she's also questing for 2. I do think she's a good card, but is she better than Alice?
It's very close. I think she's right there in that spot. I think where you have her right now is exactly where I would put her. She, like, that card selection ability, especially in a slower blue ramp deck, can really help you sort through the weeds. Like, it feels incredible to play popsicles and stuff just to start digging through the deck, so having something else that can help you dig through the deck each turn without having to do the bounce shenanigans.
Yeah.
Really strong, but it's just a little slow.
Yeah, like I definitely can't end up any higher than like the speed that we mentioned is huge. I think I always find them a little lackluster, and I think that's an advantage to them. Is like no one's gonna be, I gotta get rid of that Sisu. It's gonna win them the game, but I think that the ability to slip under the radar is really where her power lies, and earns her that spot in B tier.
Yeah.
It's not being an immediate threat. That's a good point too.
Okay.
I do think one thing to be concerned is going to be where the game is going. I think slow is going to be too slow. I think we're going to hit a point where being slow is too slow very soon. Set 3 might see a lot of people bumped down on the tier list once we see how fast everything's going.
True. Yeah. I'm very excited to continue this conversation with every set and see how things shuffle around here. But with that being said, why don't we move on to Namari, another character in that movie. I don't think she is even anywhere close to being as useful as Sisu. I honestly think we have another C tier card on our hands for the time being. Why don't you guys go ahead and give me your thoughts on that?
Yeah, honestly, I think she's down there with Toddle Duck. It's just her abilities are so at odds with each other. Like, she wants to be a bodyguard, but then she also wants to be challenging things. It's just a weird mix.
Yeah,
like,
that's a little bit goofy.
She feels like she just dies too quickly for her abilities to really be of major use. Like, 4-drop bodyguard, not too bad, but outside of that, she's just a little clunky.
Yeah, and she's uninkable. I think one thing that would have helped her tremendously was having even like resist +1. I think that could have earned her a higher spot for sure. but as she is, I couldn't agree more. It kind of contradicts itself for what it wants to do.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm sitting here, I pull them up. If we look at Simba, who in set 3 we're getting a steel Simba, as we like to call him. We're getting a 2-cost, inkable, 2 power, 3 toughness bodyguard. Like, that questing ready characters is really cool as a mechanic, and I'm excited to see where that ends up later on. But just Namari saying, my whole gimmick is I'm a more expensive, uninkable. I only have 1 more health than a 2-cost card that everybody wants to see if they need a bodyguard.
Right.
Like, that 1 extra health and challenging ready characters with a whopping 2 power, which can help at times, but it's a lot of cool things stapled on a not cool body.
Yeah, I mean, building on that, challenging a readied character, 2 is enough to take out quite a lot of the aggro deck characters that they're wanting to keep readied, your Pinocchios and your Lilos and Maleficents. She's helpful for that, for sure, but she doesn't take out the Arthur, and sometimes, that's the one you want to take out even more.
Yeah, takes out John, though, Prince John, but again, you're probably not seeing her if that's the case.
And the Bucky, right? And both of those characters otherwise have ward, so they're kind of frustrating. So I suppose she's good in that situation, but yeah, I'm happy.
Although also you are in steel with swords, so
true, very true. Yeah. All right, well, let's talk about probably the best, if not the best, tied for the best card to come out of set 2, in my opinion, and that's this Beast. What is it? Tragic Hero. Some people call him Sad Beast or Emo Beast. Was underrated at first, but quickly found its spot. I think he's probably the most expensive legendary in set 3, or maybe even the most expensive legendary of all of them at this point. If not, he's very close to the top. I do think he's probably potentially our only S tier card out of the legendaries, because most steel decks are saying this is auto include. Whether you're running 4 of them, I don't know, but I do think most steel decks are putting this card on their list.
Such a menace. Every time I see this card, I cry a little bit.
Yeah.
It's such a swing. Like, you think you're doing good, you think, you're on par in that mid-game kind of, like, scramble to find an advantage, and then they drop Beast, and it's just, all of your advantage tanks.
Yeah, and he's another one of those cards that if you don't deal with him all in one turn, they're going to have a really powerful monster swinging on you next turn, or they're going to heal them up or something to continue his utility. Like, he doesn't just have one useful thing. Turning into a 7/5 is sometimes just ridiculously strong. But yeah, the card advantage that he grants you is always useful. I think he is an auto include. Do you guys disagree with S tier, or are we all in agreement on that?
Yeah, absolute S tier. The only edit being he is a 3/5 or a 7/4, because he does have to have damage, but
true,
he always does replace himself unless they play unless they tank or can, or like have some way to mark some damage on him. You'll almost always replace the card on your next turn. I think it's like he's not like, I don't think he's quite a bombshell. Like, he's not a bombshell. He is what I like to call Packed to Death by Ducks. It is a lot of tiny incremental advantage that he poses.
Okay.
That just outpaces you so fast. Like, he's just there. That's it. He doesn't do a whole lot, but he's just this thing where you're like, oh, I have to interact with him, or they're gonna draw a bunch, or I don't interact with him. All right, take him. Like, he's a bad decision machine, which is my favorite angle. He's absolutely an S tier.
He's what Sisu wanted to be.
Very true, yeah. And as of right now, we don't have an appropriate shift target for him. But yet again, a lot of times Steel and Emerald are being paired, and with that Morph card, if he survives, shifting Beast Tragic Hero down on turn 3, that's awesome. And if he gets another shift target, this card's just gonna pretty much, I think, breach the top of the S tier, in my opinion. Being able to get him down on turn 3 and accelerating your card draw that early on a body who's also extremely powerful and quests for 2, that's a very strong card.
Yeah, I'm honestly tempted to put it above Hades.
Oh yeah, I think it goes up with Maleficent and Rapunzel. He's right next to between. He's definitely in the same vein as that Ursula in the kind of thing of I'm not doing a whole lot, but I'm doing just enough to get under your skin, and that's the important part.
So yeah, you think between Rapunzel and Maleficent is acceptable, or is he sitting at the top of the S tier?
I think we're fine where he is. I think the reason is only because the meta's oversaturated with Steel and not Amber right now. Steel Songs is kind of getting that comeback, but Rapunzel is not seeing as much play because Steel sees many more decks than Amber does. Amber has the Steel Songs, and so you see them both in that. But the other decks, you see a lot of Sapphire Steel. Can't run Amber in that. Or you might see Emerald Steel. Can't run Amber in that. I think it's just Steel has 3 super solid decks right now, and Amber only has 1. So I still think Rapunzel is better in the long run, and I just think we see Beast a lot more, and that's what's going. Oh, he goes higher.
Yeah,
that's not a bad point.
Yeah, you definitely see a lot of Beast, but you're right. For quite a while there, the anything Amber combination kind of took a little bit of a dip because Ruby Amethyst was kind of running the show, and honestly, though, you a lot of times, if you're seeing a Beast, you might also be seeing the Rapunzel in the very same deck because Amber Steel is, one of the better combinations you could have. So
yeah, and also Rapunzel plus Beast is very gross combination. That's just so much card advantage. But
also, putting it out there, the Tiana deck's taken some names. She healing a Tiana for a couple and then drawing a card or 2 just to get them out of your hand immediately. I might be more inclined to let a Beast draw cards if I see a Tiana, just because it might mean I get to play my Be Prepared if they hit 2 cards they can't play. Or they can only play 1 of them.
That's true. With Rapunzel, you can choose. With Beast, you cannot. Sometimes
I think Rapunzel lets you pick up to 3, doesn't she?
It depends on how much damage you've healed. So yeah, you could decide to only remove 1 damage, or you could decide to remove. Can you decide to? It doesn't say may.
Yeah. You can. It's up to 3 damage, so you can declare 2 damage, 1 damage, 0 damage.
Okay, so yeah, she does have more utility and versatility in that situation with Tiana. So yeah, and you know what? Now that you mention it, I did lose a game not so long ago with Beast doing exactly that. I was really counting on him just getting me that an additional. I thought, he's going to draw me 2 cards. My hand was empty this turn. I'll ink the 1 and play the 1. And of course, I drew 2 uninkable cards and didn't have enough ink to play them both. And that lost the game for me. So, yeah, I think we are correct when we say Beast is just below Rapunzel. So I'm happy with that.
Yeah.
Still excellent card. So, for those of you still with us, you probably have noticed by now that we've got a Lady Tremaine still hanging out here to be placed. I know Lady Tremaine is not an enchanted card, but I think everybody watching would agree that she absolutely should have been an enchanted card because wow, is she awesome. She sees so much play and is honestly, in some people's opinion, at risk for being banned just because of how she completely says no to Ward. She doesn't care. She's going to remove something no matter what. I think she is a really oppressive card, and she definitely deserves an honorable mention in our Enchanted tier list, and in my opinion deserves a spot right up there in the S tier. I know you guys probably have a lot to say about Lady Tremaine, because especially Frank, I know you play her in your deck, so why don't you go ahead and share your thoughts on her.
All right, I could easily spend 2 hours. She is probably my favorite card I play right now. Listing my 3 favorite use cases. First one being, you be prepared, next turn they either have to play 2 or more characters, or you play her and they lose their character. 2, she doesn't even need to be played. People are just terrified of leaving one good character on the board because, oh, that Tremaine's going to come down and ruin me.
Yep.
And then number 3.
She's so rough, man. It happens all the time. I never know how to handle her, and I always want to play around her. And it's, sometimes I was dead wrong. Other times I made the right play. But yeah, just that intimidation that she may or may not be coming down is enough to slow you way down.
Oh, and then my favorite, number 3. Most people know how to play around one Lady Tremaine. But she has that fun little ability called Shift. And for 10 ink, you can play 2 Tremaines by playing one and then shifting the second on top of her. So if somebody does play around her and they're like, I have to put all my eggs in this basket. If I don't, I lose. And you only have 10 ink. They're like, they have 10. They can't do it.
Yeah.
2 shift. And in other matchups, if you have a Tremaine out already and you're playing Ruby Amethyst Bounce, Snake Mim Tremaine only costs 8 and does it again and again.
Yeah, I personally can't stand it, man. Oh, that is so rough. One of my the thing I fear most going up against Ruby Amethyst is the be prepared into Lady Tremaine, and God forbid into a second Lady Tremaine. That's unstoppable.
She's so backbreaking.
My number 1.
So, but I mean, with that being said, does she then find herself sitting pretty here at the top of our S tier? She's definitely an auto include, hands down. Does she outplay everything else though?
So I would love to say yes, especially because I know I'm exceptionally biased, but she's still a play around. You can still play around her to some degree. She is still a little tougher than other cards because she isn't inkable. And if you're not in Sapphire for her, she can kind of just sit in your hand at a bad time. Like, I love her to pieces, but she does have, like, as someone who's played every single game just about with her since I picked up some extra copies, she has enough instances where she is going to sit in your hand and going to hurt, whereas a lot of the inkable threats don't. So I think I think right there is perfect for her, sitting up there with Beast and Maleficent, because she comes down earlier than the others. She gets around a lot of stuff, but also the ability for her to just sit in your hand to brick on her more often than you think is the only thing I hate about her. Like, super solid stats. She quests for an acceptable amount. She makes people cry.
Yeah. Now, I also think the one of the only available shift targets for her is also uninkable, isn't it? The Lady Tremaine that comes down, I think, on maybe turn 2. It's a 2 cost, I do believe, and she steals a lore away, I think.
I dabbled. She only steals if you're behind, which is the only reason I didn't like.
Okay, but she's also uninkable.
I dabbled with the version that played her. But yeah, she's pretty much the only good target is going to be that one. But honestly, I play her without shift targets, and I'm not sad about it. The shift target is a nice option in some versions of decks, but a 6 is not a backbreaking cost. That Tremaine just wins games. Very surprisingly, dropping a Lady Tremaine can very often win you a game if you do it right.
Yep, absolutely does. So I'm happy to have her as an honorable mention. I hope nobody else has an issue with that. But for anybody that is watching, I would love to know your guys' thoughts. You know, leave us a comment down below. You know, call us out if you disagree, or you know, whatever you guys think. I'm very curious. This is a fun conversation to have, and I often do look at the comments and like to respond and keep the conversation going. So yeah, I think this is a pretty cool tier. Like I said earlier, I'm excited to see just how things shift around with the next set. We're only we're like what, 2 weeks away from Into the Inkland, so that's very exciting. But yeah, I think this is a pretty accurate tier list. I want to thank you guys again so much for joining me. I'd love to have you guys on in the future as we discuss the next sets to come. So thanks again, guys, for joining us. And I suppose until next time, this is what our tier list is going to look like.
Absolutely. And thanks again for having us. An awesome time. And everyone, like, if you listen, and make sure give the lizard a like, comment, subscribe. I know I also like to pop in and check the comments, see if anyone's looking to argue, all in good faith. But thanks so much for having us. It was a blast.
Absolutely. Well, folks, that's it for this video. Thanks so much for watching, and if you enjoy getting consistent injections of all things Lorcana right onto your YouTube feed, then please consider subscribing to my channel, and as always, be kind and have a wonderful day.
He's a lizard. Yeah, he's a lizard.